when a person says, is research advocacy right for me? It's challenging, as you've all explained. So what are the kinds of questions one needs to really ask themselves before they start on the path of becoming a research advocate?
Actually, this is something that Research Advocacy Network has done some work on, and actually created a self-assessment. We tried to make it fun to help you determine number one, is research advocacy the right path for you? And if you choose research advocacy, where's the place to start? Do you start with being on trying to be on an IRB? Do you start with trying to do grant review? And so we worked with another advocate who's a psychotherapist and developed a self-assessment that's on our website to kind of give you a jump start. Because Mary Lou has a great story about being on an IRB for 6 years, and tell your IRB story. About
which one is
it? Where you had a friend that was on the IRB and then just hated it and had spent 2 years.
Well, yes, because people think they want to do something, they're asked to do it, and so they volunteer, and then 2 years goes down the road and you say to them, did you like that? No, I hated it, but I made the commitment, so I thought I had to stay.
Why did she hate it?
Well, some people, and women may be more prone to this, but I'm not sure of that, look at these committees as social. So they think in some ways they're going to become friends with the people on the committee, social friends. It's one of the things I've now learned to say to any advocate who's joining the cooperative groups, and those are the NCI designated groups that do the multi-centered research, is if you're coming here for a social experience, it isn't. These are researchers. By title almost, they are not the most social people. So if that's what you want, you need to find a different place to be. If you want to do good work, if you want to hear the latest research, if you want to be part of that research, if you want to be part of making a difference for the future, this is the place for you. And you'll get your social experience from the other advocates.
Right.
Yeah, the why is probably a big question. When you look at that, why do you want to do that? Mm-hmm. Because if you're going into it for the wrong reasons,
you may be able to choose another area of advocacy.
Exactly.
Research advocacy may not be your strength. Now, what about the person who has no science background and says, I really want to get involved, I don't understand the terminology, I don't know the science. Talk to us, Mary Lou, then about how one begins to acquire that knowledge and where can they go to strengthen that.
I mean, I'm an English major. I'm an English major because I didn't like the science. So that was a challenge. That was a challenge for me. So I did go to Project LEAD. The National Breast Cancer Coalition has a wonderful program called Project LEAD. I was in the second class. And at one point when we were getting in study groups, I said to the leader of the study group, Bob, I'm really sorry, but I think I'm only getting 10% of this. And he said, that's all we expect you to get. Well, if you're a little bit of an overachiever, that drives you nuts, So that was my start. It was I called it Immersion Therapy because you just, get the DNA thing, you get, and it was very helpful, but it was only a start. Because then I got what I would call more on-the-job training. I joined the cooperative groups, I sat in meetings where, by the time somebody has told me something 7 times, I got it.
Right.
But you can't expect to get that really in-depth knowledge of something that's exceedingly complex one time. And I know what was very helpful to me was to hear other scientists say, Mary Lou, we didn't have this in our college education either. We had to learn this on the job. And I was like, oh, okay. I think the other piece that's important for advocates is to understand the process because that's where you can make an inroad, is into the process. And if you don't understand what happens to that scientific concept as it tries to become clinical practice, you're missing a big part of it. And I think a big part where advocates can really make a difference.
Because again, research is a journey. That means research advocacy is a journey. Let's talk about what you can expect on that journey, because I'm sure that you run into some obstacles and some disappointments, failures and disappointments related to clinical outcomes. Let's talk about that part of the journey.
I think you can invest an incredible amount of time in a project and come away from it and go, oh well, that just didn't go quite where you expected it to. And so the time and effort you put in, because as we've said, this is not a place that you're going to make a lot of money. Most of it's volunteer time. And so as you do those projects, you learn to pick and choose who you're going to work with, the relationships you develop that you know are going to be more productive, and the things that you want to, as an individual or as an organization, get invested in and try to make better decisions as you go down that path. And it is a real learning process as you work through it. And finding out, again, as I said earlier, it's not about you as a cancer patient or your disease only. It's only when you can begin to see the bigger picture and want to be a part of the bigger process and realize a lot of what we do too is to disseminate what's going on in the research community to the patient community. Because what's in the press, people think they read about something happened in a mouse, that I can go to my doctor's office tomorrow and I can get that. Yeah. And a lot of what we have to do is help the rest of the advocacy community or patient community understand this is a long, slow process. And while we'd like to make it faster, and we're doing what we can to make it faster, it still is a very laborious kind of thing to provide effective, safe, new compounds for treatment.
That's an interesting thought too, because I think that the public has a hard time understanding what it takes to bring a compound to market, that industry has to eat the cost, and so much goes into, and such great efforts on many different hopeful products, but really few of them ever come to fruition. And I think this is an area, there's so much bashing and fear and hostility and really negative judgment by the general public towards industry and regulatory, without the breadth of understanding of really what goes on, and that we are on the same team.
Yes, having just finished my 4-year term on the Oncology Drug Advisory Committee for the FDA, real eye-opening experience for me, because I think as a society we want everything now. We've become very instant. Yes. And so we want a drug and we want access to it now, but we want to also it has to be effective and safe, but we don't want to wait the time that's necessary to get those kinds of things. And so if something gets through too quickly and we find out there are problems, then we're right out there to litigate about it. And
right, well, it's a no-win
exactly.
situation.
I gained a new understanding and a more appreciation, I think, for that process, and trying again to share that beyond that experience to other people about, this is an important piece of it, and you have to look at different aspects.
But I think too, as a research advocate, you need to have the long view, and you need to be, for want of a better word, tenacious. It's not going to be the
and
first.
thick-skinned.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the first time somebody says, I don't think that's a good idea, or we don't do that, you just accept it and say, and you bring it up again, and you bring it up again, and in the end, sometimes it works.
Right.
But,
and we celebrate those.
And we definitely celebrate those.
Elda, do you want to add anything about what one can expect on their research advocacy journey?
I think, as Mary Lou said, we need to be aware that we need to have that long view, and that it's not going to happen tomorrow. We want it to, but it's not, and we just have to stick with it and keep the long term. You know, it's just, we can try, we'll fail, but, you know, celebrate the successes that we do have, but really know that, you know, we have to go back and back several times.
And I think, Selma, something that you were talking about as far as industry and sometimes other advocate organizations, we fight over things that don't mean anything. So I think it's that idea that we need to all come together. That we are all in this together. And, you know, we know some wonderful researchers in basic science. They're never going to make the clinical research happen. And the clinical researchers are never going to manufacture drug. And without all of us, we're never going to get the treatments. So the more we can bring our community together, I think the more powerful we are. And yes, it takes time, it takes communication, and it takes patience, which probably none of us have a lot of, or we wouldn't be in this line of work.
It takes an understanding that collaborations take more time and work and money, usually, you know. But that's really the way that we're going to make an advance, because, you know, each of us doing it in our own little silos and infighting will only hold things up.
And so thanks to all of you, and in particular to Ginny Mason, to Mary Lou Smith, and to Elda Railey for coming together and giving us this opportunity and including me as a research advocate.
Absolutely.